time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Well, what's up, everyone? A pleasant good evening to you, dissidents. Welcome one and all to the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss here, back, of course, again with Russell Dobular.
Hello.
All right, beautiful. We got 161 in the chat here on YouTube. We got a crowd filing in on Rumble. Jake, our producer, is in the house backstage, but we have another very, very special guest backstage who we are going to admit right now, folks. We're going to waste no time introducing our guest of the evening. He is the author of several staple books, including What's the Matter with Kansas, Listen Liberal, and The People Know. Thomas Frank. Thomas, thank you so much for being here. It's great to meet you, sir.
Gentlemen, can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Yeah,
I can hear you great.
Awesome.
We hear you. The lighting is spectacular.
Isn't it? I paid a lot for that system.
All right, so now we're going to delve into your punk past. We're going to talk a little bit about the Misfits, the Cramps, suicidal tendencies.
Oh, my God.
I
used to write about that stuff a lot, like back in the day. Oh, yes. Yes, back in the day. I don't even know if I have that stuff here anymore. Yeah, it looks like I've moved it all out, but I edited a magazine called The Baffler. Well, I started it and edited it, and we used to write about those subjects quite a bit. It feels like a lifetime ago now, but...
Well, it's funny, I'll have you know, What's the Matter with Kansas was the only book I was assigned to read throughout my academic career that I actually read front to back. The only one. All the others, I would either read Cliff Notes or I would read like the first and last paragraph of every chapter and, just figure I can trick the professor or the teacher into thinking I read it. And it worked. It worked most of the time. But yours, I was actually interested in reading. I was assigned it freshman year, which was one of only 2 years I completed in college. So my academic career is not a long one.
But that's a high compliment, by the way. I wonder if there even is a Cliff's Notes, of What's the Matter with
I'm sure now there is, but this was 2005, so it was hard to find. That's probably why I figured I should try reading it, because there were no Cliff Notes available. But then I started and I liked it, so I finished it. So yeah, it's great to meet you. It was a good read, and all your stuff is a great read. I mean, your books have really radicalized many in this space. This sort of online independent left media space would not be what it is were it not for your writings.
Come on now. I'm barely even online. I know how to
I don't necessarily mean that as a compliment. This is not a very healthy space.
I barely do. I can barely do email, although I have to say I do a lot of my research online. And so the stuff that is available now, like historical stuff, is just so when I was in graduate school, if you wanted to read newspapers from the 1890s, say, you get the microfilm, you had to go in and sit in front of the microphone. There was no possible way to do an electronic search of the text you had to read the whole thing, and it was really hard, and it was very distracting. It would take you forever to read, because it's so fascinating reading old newspapers. But now they're all online. The ones that were very hard to get your hands on are easy to get your hands on, and you can do electronic searches. And in this way, I was able to, I don't know if you guys saw this, I was able to find the very first newspaper that ever used the word populist.
Yeah. Yeah,
It was the
book,
people
yeah.
who invented it and used it in print in May of 1891. It was.
Yeah, no, that's in the book. That's in the
Yeah,
introduction.
yeah.
So do you never have to go into like a dusty old public records building anymore? Is it all digitized?
I was in one 2 days ago, and it was in fact dusty. I was in the. This is going to make you laugh, or maybe it's going to make you curious. I don't know. I was in the National Medical Library, which is here in Bethesda. It's on the campus of the National Institutes of Health. And you go through this incredible series of, you have to jump through these hoops in order to get admitted to it. And it took quite a while, but I got over there. They got the book that I was looking for. They brought it to me, and you know what I did? I photographed the whole thing with my iPhone in about half an hour and left.
Yeah,
But
you can do that now.
Yeah, it was a book that it weirdly there's no trace of it on the internet, but I had to track it down, and these guys had a copy. So,
All right, well, let's get started with some questions.
And I love doing that, by the way. This is how you can see I do not belong on the internet. I love libraries. I love digging into archives. Yeah.
You're doing fine. I can tell you got the books. Russell's got the books. I look like the dumb guy here with the high school yearbook backdrop. No books in my back.
I see that. It's impressive.
I have what I consider the first two in a trilogy.
Yeah.
But my copy of your most recent book got hurt so bad that we'll use
what happened?
Keaton's version. My backpack got caught in the rain, and it just got.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Well, that's too bad.
But it's still. I mean, it's just the cover.
Reads just as good, indeed. So, folks, just so you know, in the chat, we will be taking super chats. We have not forgotten super chats. We'll be taking them after the conclusion of the interview because Thomas does have limited time, but that's why we're going to jump right in. So, your last book in that sort of trilogy that Russell deems it, the People Know, of course, the subtitle of that is A Brief History of Anti-Populism.
Which a word that I thought I had invented, by the way, until I was almost done with the book. Anti-Populism. I thought that was like I was going to add that to the culture, right? And then I discovered when I was almost done that other people had in fact written about it before. So I wasn't the inventor of that idea, but I think I'm the first one to sketch out the history of it, where it comes from, how it came to be so universal. And most importantly, I think how the good old American left-wing tradition of populism has just been so traduced in recent years, and badmouthed so unfairly, and so ridiculously, But anyhow, but yes, that's what I'm sorry. I forgot what you asked me.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
He didn't yet.
Well, to me, I didn't ask it yet, but to me, I mean, anti-populist rhetoric also always sort of struck me as anti-democratic rhetoric, democratic d. Which is why
it's the fear of the people. It's
the fear of people having a voice and having that voice influence political decisions. To me, that's what democracy is, right? So all these people fretting about populism, they're really fretting about democracy and democratic outcomes.
And that goes all the way back to the founding of the country. I mean, if you go back and look at the founders, the only two of them were even marginally supportive of democracy. Franklin and Jefferson, and the others hated it. The others were like, no, that's really dangerous. That's like the worst thing in the world. And as we all know, Jefferson only believed in it in theory, anyhow. But then of course the French Revolution was for about a century was everybody's idea of what happens if you let the people actually have a say. They do crazy shit. They go wild. And so when populism came along, in the 19th century was the politics of it all over the world were driven by this fear that if you don't look out, you're going to have a kind of Robespierre reign of terror situation all over again. So you got to keep a lid on that thing. And when populism happened in the 1890s, it just scared the hell out of the sort of ruling class of the United States, and that's
what you call the democracy scare. That's what.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't looked at that book for a while. That's a good term. I like that because democracy scares happen. They happen again and again and again. And in our national life, and you had it again in the 1930s. Almost like note for note, a cover version of the attack on populism in the 1890s, but this time it's an attack on Roosevelt and the New Deal. And the great thing about the 30s is that the good guys won that time, so they couldn't stop them. But nowadays, this anti-populism is like it's everywhere you go, and especially among European political scientists. Now, I have no idea how they managed to conquer, political discourse here in America, but somehow they did. And, they have flipped the meaning of the word populism from being a good thing, a noble thing, which when I was coming up, that's what maybe that's my Kansas upbringing. We thought that everybody knew populism was the good guys, right? But now it's supposed to be, evil, insane. It's like Donald Trump, it's fascist, it's proto-fascism, anyhow.
Well, yeah, I mean, in 2016, all this fretting that Donald Trump represented this existential threat to democracy always rang hollow to me, because it seemed like every institution of consolidated capital and consolidated power was on the blue team that year. And it was the ordinary people, disproportionately people without 4-year college degrees. So people without inroads to those institutions who voted for Trump. So it struck me as an entirely Democratic outcome, a far more Democratic outcome than had the Democrats won that year.
There, look, I have I have a complexion now.
You have a little color. Yeah.
Well, I don't like Trump, didn't vote for Trump. But you're certainly right about all the powers being aligned with the Democratic Party that year. And it was really disturbing. And it's, we're in new territory in this country. We're in really uncharted territory. All my life, the powers that be were aligned with the Republicans.
Right.
That's always the way it's been. For me, the influential period was the late 70s and the early 80s. And, Ronald Reagan had everything behind him. And they've all, Wall Street, right? Silicon Valley were these libertarians. They're the great theorist of Silicon Valley. This is later on, but was a guy called George Gilder. He's one of the great theorists of Silicon Valley. And he actually was very influential in the Reagan White House. Everything has changed sides, it feels like. Right. And it's a very strange and disorienting time. At the same time, I don't really want to talk about I'm sure you guys will want to talk about the present. I think there's a very real chance that Trump is going to win again. And I think it's really, frightening, because one of the things that was interesting about his presidency is, for all those fears that the liberals had in 2016, he didn't do anything. He was totally incompetent as president. The dude couldn't figure out anything. Couldn't find his ass with both hands, right?
He couldn't even start World War III. That's how incompetent he was.
Well, there's all these stories, right? Like, he tried to pull out of Afghanistan and the generals tricked him. Do you know about this stuff? It's it's crazy. The guy was just like, he had no idea what he was doing. He would fire people on Twitter. He was, but I think that if he gets in again, I think we really should be worried. I think he won't screw it up quite so badly next time around. But you're absolutely right in that description of 2016. And what's amazing to me is that the Democratic Party, with a few exceptions here and there, can't figure out what's gone wrong. They can't understand it. But when I say Democratic Party, I want to throw in there like the pundit core of America, such as they are. They're in a dying industry, but they still exist. The people who make opinion in this country, they don't understand it. They can't understand it. And basically, I spent the last 20 years trying to explain it to them, right? And it's just utterly pointless. You can't get through. They don't listen. They don't care. They don't read history, and now they're faced with this kind of catastrophe, and they can't figure it out. They just it's totally bewildering to them.
Well, let me pitch this as your one of your final books. I don't know. Are you still writing books? Are you working on a book?
I am, but it's not a political book. By the way, I should say to you, it's such a relief. I'm writing about something completely removed from this. from all of this stuff. And it's so refreshing. Before I wrote about politics, I wrote about, I wrote about creativity, not like in the stupid sense. I mean, like in the critical sense. And this is my first book was about what was called the creative revolution in advertising in the 1960s.
Ah, right.
So I knew all about the advertising.
Right, that came out of your thesis, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I believe it's to this day the only secondhand historical account of Madison Avenue in the 1960s. There's lots of memoirs about it, but this is the only actual historical account of it. And then I somehow got from that into politics, which is a long story. But then after, all this stuff has been going on. It's very disheartening to me, as I would write these books that I felt were more and more and more on target. Like you read Listen Liberal, right? And you read The People Know. And I was getting progressively more and more nowhere. You know what I'm saying?
Because they're stupid. What? That's why it was called Listen Liberal.
Exactly.
Listen Bitch. That should have been your book. Next book called Listen Bitch. That should be your next one. No, but honestly, your next one should be What's the Matter with Park Slope? What's the matter with the Upper West Side?
No, that's what it was, right? That's what it was.
Well, because that's kind of What's the Matter with Kansas was kind of about. Like what happens in the middle of the country and why.
That's my neighborhood. Right. That's where I grew up. I grew up in this very wealthy part of Kansas City in the Kansas side, in Johnson County, Kansas. And my neighbors when I was a kid were the most Republican people I thought that I would ever meet, right? It's like people they adored Bob Dole. The governor of Kansas lived in the neighborhood. He didn't even live in Topeka. He lived in my neighborhood. He didn't want to live, because Kansas City has restaurants and whatnot, And it was, these were like very, very, very Republican people. I was there for the 2020 election, and hiding out from the coronavirus and doing this and that. And after the election was over, Johnson County went Democratic for the first time since 1912. This is
right. You mentioned
Kansas.
I remember that.
And my neighborhood specifically, this very, very wealthy part of it went Biden won every single precinct. Now this is the ruling elite of Kansas City we're talking about. This is the ruling class of the state of Kansas. This is them. And they went almost unanimously for this guy. It's a Democrat. It's unthinkable. When I was a kid, that would have been absolutely. This is happening everywhere. So, I had a friend, by the way, who when I wrote "What's the Matter with Kansas," he said, "Tom, you could make a career out of this. You could do the James Michener of politics, do every single state,
Right."
Well, a lot of our audience. Now you voted for Sanders, I think, right?
In the Democratic primary, and I did it. I did it again in 2020. Yeah. I fell for it twice. Yeah.
So it may surprise you because I get the sense that you're horrified by the prospect of Donald Trump. I would say that your work has radicalized more people that I know away from the two-party system than any other living author. I cannot tell you how many people. Yes, I cannot tell you how many people have told me that they read Listen Liberal, and that was it.
Yeah,
they were done with that entire system.
Maybe they have the courage of my convictions in a way
that's where the question's going.
Yeah,
indeed.
Yeah.
Right. How do you feel about the fact? Because it seems like you still do want to remain within that system, but critique it. Whereas I think a lot of people who have read your work have taken it as a signal that the system is hopeless. And particularly with the people
I don't disagree with that. I wouldn't say hopeless, but I mean, come on, you've read what I have to say. This is one screwed up system. My wager, if you will, when I wrote What's the Matter with Kansas, and then even more so when I wrote Listen Liberal, the idea was you show these people the error of their ways, and they're politicians. They want to win, right? They like winning. You show them the error of their ways, and they'll be like, that's right. We need to change what we're doing. Now, what I didn't, and now I'm 58 and I know better. That is not, that's like, I might as well flap my arms and fly to the moon. It's like, that's not how you change the way these people behave. They don't really care if they win by, they like being in the majority. They like winning, but they don't want to do the things that they have to do to win, like overwhelmingly, like the Democrats used to do, right. Which our parents knew about. We now, it's just a distant fading memory now. When they were, they held the House of Representatives from 1930 until 1994 with only two brief intermissions where the Republicans got in for one session at a time back in the 50s. Other than that, they had the most incredible winning streak in U.S. history. And Roosevelt and Truman won by these incredible margins, and you look at Lyndon Johnson in 64. So I was born in 65, right along with the decline, right when the decline begins. And, they are incapable of doing anything like that anymore. And frankly, they like being the party that they are, a party that can never replicate those triumphs. But they can't replicate those triumphs, but they are the apple of the funders, the billionaires' eye.
Right.
And for them, that's very important in a place like Washington. They are, nobody wants to be. This is a very wealthy city. It takes a lot of money to live, sort of, pleasant lifestyle, middle class lifestyle here. They like being those people. They like being the apple of the billionaire's eye. That's fine. And if it means that they barely eke out a win, or that the House of Representatives goes back and forth and the Senate goes back and forth and they no longer can, so be it. And it means you can never, you'll never get national health care. It's like Obama, right? Where they all their grand plans came to nothing. It wasn't even clear they really had grand plans. And the entire press corps then builds, a gigantic theory for why the Democratic Party can never do anything. And that's the best we can ever hope for. It's absolutely infuriating. And here I am laughing about it, right?
We laugh about it all the time. It's part of our chart.
There's a bunch of different ways to talk about this. One of them is what does Mr. Frank think we should do instead? Two options. One is build a third party, and the other is do something to take over one of the two parties. And I suspect that the second choice is the only way that anything is ever going to happen. Because, by the way, are you guys ready for this? We're going to talk for hours. If you let me go, I will talk I will talk.
You told me you had an hour to 9. That's all. Yeah. You told me 9 o'clock. I'll talk for as long as you want.
I could see 10 minutes in. Oh yeah. So that cute little list you had of questions.
Yeah. Out.
Toss that aside. Here we go.
This is what I find. This is what I find to be perplexing, and if I'm being honest, a little bit frustrating. Is that despite this body of work, you keep returning to this idea that the Democratic Party is worth reforming, or that it's more feasible. Like reforming the Democratic Party is more feasible than building a third party. And one of my questions that I had on my list was that now you have the Greens poised to nominate a star of sorts. I mean, not a huge star, but Cornel West is a pretty big name.
Hey,
he's already registering pretty well in some early polls.
Yeah.
He's already cracking more than 5% in some early polls. Yeah. Not only do I see potential in his candidacy to really just shake up the two-party system and break the sort of duopoly in a way if he can register enough support, but also, and I know that polling always says, voters always say that they might vote for a third party a year before the vote, and then they always come home to one of the two. But not in these kinds of numbers. We have never seen these kinds of numbers where 47% of voters say they would consider a third party. Or when you add a nameless third party candidate to Biden, Trump, it registers 30%. The third party option actually beats Trump in a three-way race.
I
know it's
That's
early.
Awesome.
Let's say those numbers decrease by 2/3 or 3/4. You're still talking about huge potential for a third party this year, because it's likely going to be two failed incumbents going back to back. There's no better time for a third party to run and say, we've literally tried both of these guys. So given all that, I just would ask, you know, why? Why do you think option two is better?
Now you know, we're gonna have to wait and see until the actual election. I'm actually a huge fan of Cornel West. You should go back and read the interview I did with him about it was when Obama was president. It was in salon.com, and it was it 2014, something like that. Anyhow, it's one of the best interviews I've ever done. The guy's amazing. He has such a way with words. I love listening to him, and he and I agree on the issues, like almost, you know, he's, you know, I like him a lot. So that would obviously, he would be I would be very attracted to him as a candidate. Now, and the last time that a third party candidate really made a big splash like this was Ross Perot back in 92, and, you know, swung the election to Bill Clinton. Almost certainly. I mean, we don't know, of course, but almost certainly did that. The thing about, and, you know, Perot wasn't exactly my cup of tea. I hate to admit it. I think I voted for Bill Clinton that year. Isn't that shameful? It's, but
I share your shame.
Anyhow, the thing about a third party,
I was 5 years old when Bill Clinton got elected, so can't blame me.
The thing about a third party is what I mean when I'm talking about that is I mean, there's third parties. I want to see one that is a full-blown party, not just a guy running for president, but a party that has that has a presence in every state, at every line on the ballot, you know, that is fielding candidates for the Senate, the House, you know, and is at the head of a mass movement. I mean, what I mean by that is that has a chance to win. And the last time we saw that in this country was, in fact, populism in the 1890s. And they were, you know, Kansas had two different populist governors. We had a whole bunch of senators who were populists, members of Congress. And so did all the nearby states, Nebraska, the Dakotas, Oklahoma. Well, Oklahoma wasn't a state yet, but all over the Midwest, all over the South, you saw this happening. And it was a real third party. And once they, and I would love to see that again. Don't get me wrong; that would be like the best thing ever. I am your man if we can build something like that. And one of the reasons that's important is because our two-party system is massively dysfunctional in all sorts of ways. Now, the political scientists, they don't like to write about this because they like the two-party system. They think that it, you know, it gets us to the golden mean or the median voter, or whatever the hell they have some stupid ass term for it. But one of the things it actually does is the parties will periodically refuse to debate really important issues. And it takes a third party to come in and smash the system apart and make them debate the most important issue of the day. So, classic example, slavery. The two parties refused to debate slavery in the years leading up to the Civil War. The Democrats and the Whigs, they wouldn't do it. You had to have a third party come in and just break that system apart with a sledgehammer. And that was the Republicans. That's where they came from. They were a third party. And they succeeded. And the existing second party, the Whigs, died, you know. And then in the late 19th century, the two parties, the Republicans and Democrats, refused to debate industrialization and inequality. You know, they wouldn't talk about it, what was happening. You know, neither one of them would give, you know, anything, they wouldn't give the time of day to the labor movement, you know, and this is the country was having riots and strikes. And, you know, it was close to civil war. You know, a lot of people thought at the time, but they wouldn't debate it. And so the populists had this opening and they came in and took it. And in that case, what happened was the third party, the populists, got absorbed by the Democrats, or a lot of them did. And I told this whole story, and the people know. The Democrats nominated a guy who talked like a populist, kind of imitated the populist act. And a lot of them went along with it. A lot of the rest of them went over to the Socialist Party. But anyhow, populism died out. And when it died out, this is the point I was getting to. I'm kind of encyclopedic about these things, and I apologize. When it died out,
that's what you're here for.
As soon as they had killed it, the two major parties passed laws in all of these different states to ensure that you would never have something like this happen again. That's where Jim Crow comes from, by the way, in the South. Jim Crow was, I mean, this is not me saying this, there's all of these American historians that have studied it. Populism, the idea was to bring together black farmers and white farmers who were sharecroppers at the time. In a lot of southern states, blacks could still vote back then. And this was absolutely terrifying to the southern elite who were Democrats at the time. Absolutely terrifying. And they knew that this was the Achilles heel of their whole system, and they had to come up with a way to make sure that it never happened again. And that was the origins of Jim Crow, was to make sure that you never had a movement like that happen. And in places like Kansas, they passed laws against what's called fusion voting. So a third party, one of the tactics the populists used to use was they would cross-endorse with the Democratic Party. So the Democrats would choose some guy and the populists would say, yeah, he's all right, we'll endorse him. And then the populists would choose another candidate and the Democrats would endorse him. So the candidate would appear on two different party ballot lines, and in this way would beat the Republicans, who have always been the dominant party in a place like Kansas. Well, you can't do that anymore. Not for any good reason, not for any constitutional, it's just illegal. And the funny thing is there's only a few states where it's not illegal, and those states still have good, robust third-party action, like New York State. Don't you guys still have, you have the Working Families Party?
We have the Working Families
awesome.
Party,
they're great.
but
sorry, I don't know a lot about them. I don't live there. I'm sorry. But
they're useless.
They're an arm of the
useless.
Democrats, basically.
Okay, sorry, that sucks.
They just funnel
sucks.
everybody
but look,
to the Democrats.
the system deeply needs some kind of corrective on the two-party system. We have to have it, but we don't have it now. And the problem is that the deck is stacked against us getting it. That leaves the other alternative smashing one of the two parties. And the hopeful note here is that Trump did just that to the Republicans. I mean, remember Jeb Bush? Do you remember this? They did everything they could to stop that guy, and he wrecked their party. And I laughed a lot about it at the time. I thought I never thought I would see the day, right? That this happens to the Republicans of all people. Like they were like almost like a military organization back in remember the George Bush era? And they just crumbled, I would love to see that happen within the Democratic Party, but
but it
look,
can't, because Russell, do me a favor.
I have no
grab
idea.
that book
I have
over
no
your
idea
right
how to do
shoulder,
it.
that book with the yellow cover. Grab that book. I want to show him that book. I want to recommend that book to him.
Okay.
Yes, you should give that book a read sometime. It's not going to happen. These people are shallow, incurious. They're stupid. They're selfish. They have no real politics.
True. All of that's
so
true.
it's impossible.
Yes.
It's not possible.
They have super delegates, and also
look.
Remember
Go ahead, Russell.
I mean, it would be tough. Now, let me throw out one more thing, one more factor here that you guys have to consider, which is the other place in American history where reform comes from, and that's social movements. And that is something that they can't stop. And social movements are the winning hand in our political history. So the populism grew out of it was a mass movement. It was millions and millions and millions of people. And it was called the Farmers Alliance. Doesn't really matter anymore, but it was probably the biggest mass movement the country's ever seen in a per capita sense. In the 30s, the reforms came out of, you had all that organizing from the farmers back then, but by then you also had a very robust labor movement that was out there in the streets every day, demanding, making people's voices. And these were incredibly successful movements. The civil rights movement is a third, incredibly successful. And you can build a movement like that. Now that is tough. It is hard. But we have the internet now. It's very fertile terrain out there. People are so pissed off, and social movements work. Okay. One other thing, the Democratic Party, when Franklin Roosevelt came along, they were awful. This was like, you guys, if we were alive back then, we would have nothing to do with the Democratic Party. This was a dreadful political organization. And they completely turned it on its head very quickly. Now, it took a Great Depression to do that.
But let me ask you something, because we have someone like Shama Sawant, which, by the way, program note, everybody, we're going to be interviewing Shama a week from this evening, August 9th. She has Worker Strike Back going now. Obviously, they are trying to rally the UPS workers to vote no on their tentative contract now to try and get a better deal. She's working on rent control measures in Seattle right now. She's been very, very firm in her commitment not to associate with the Democratic Party. I don't know if you've heard Chris Hedges make this point, but he's made this point that when the Democrats turn their back on workers as profoundly as they have, and such distrust grows between workers and the party, it's very difficult to build a mass working class movement as long as you are attached and associated to the Democratic Party, because they have every reason not to trust a movement that ties itself to the party in that way because of NAFTA, which I don't have to tell you about. I mean, you talked to Bill Maher about that. We were going to play that clip for you, actually.
I'm very familiar with, believe me. So in 2016, I toured the country talking about how the Democratic Party has betrayed workers, right? That's the theme of Listen Liberal, and
that's also when you disappeared from MSNBC.
Exactly. I haven't been on the media. I haven't been in the media in this country maybe a handful of times since that book came out. Isn't that just the most amazing thing? I'll tell you a funny story. So I wrote this. For me, that the 2016 election was, it was a really ugly contest and everything, but it was clear to me that Trump had a shot, and remember the New York Times said it was 95% for Hillary, all this nonsense. And I wrote this essay. Well, I wrote the Trump wins essay. I don't know if you guys remember this. It was in the Guardian. It's admittedly a British newspaper, and they published it as soon as the AP. I wrote the thing the week before the election, and they published it the moment the AP called the election for Trump. And it was a really good essay. It was solid. It was well researched. It had all the links. It was one of the best things I've ever written. And the Times and the Post hadn't prepared it, or apparently hadn't prepared anything. They were so convinced that he didn't have a chance. And so for me, this is the what a triumph, what a journalistic triumph. Like, I win, right? And you know what I win? Exactly. No, I did a tour of Australia on the strength of that one article. I was on the radio in New Zealand. I was on the radio in Canada. I went to France. I was on I forget which French national radio. They never have Americans on that. And but in America, nothing. Zero. It's the weirdest goddamn thing.
Well, they did that around the same time. They did that to you. They did that to Matt Taibbi. They did that to Glenn Greenwald right around that time. Yeah. Because Trump winning terrified them.
Yeah, but I always said I'm not a Trump supporter, but I can understand his appeal, which is apparently... Well, not apparently, which is they cannot.
They can't.
They still can't. They still can't. And that by itself is really fascinating. By the way, so I say I'm out of the political business, but I think that the time is going to come when somebody has to write the history of the last, since 2016. It's just, this country has gone absolutely nuts. We refuse to understand what's happening. It's right in front of our eyes. It's in our face every minute, and we refuse to understand it. How can we be in denial like that? It is truly one of the, it's so fascinating. I feel like I have to get back into it, but anyhow, that's for another time.
Look, don't please,
that's for a due dissidence in the year 2030.
Look, I think to truly not be in denial at this point is to understand that the plane is crashing into the mountain, that this system is beyond reform, it's FUBAR. And the question is, what do we do after it collapses? That's the main reason why I think it is, just an outrageous waste of time and waste of effort, and actually, a great misdirection of resources and energy and thought to invest in reforming the Democratic Party. I think now is a time that we have to start thinking about, okay, what comes next? On what terms do we want to rebuild a system after this one fails? Because it's gone. It's gone. Well, and I feel like your work leads people to that conclusion. And part of what people don't understand about you is how you can lead them to that conclusion, and then come November, go in and vote Democrat again.
Well,
on a hopeful note, for me, reading The People Know, I found it hopeful because it's it's a series of cases where the populists actually did win.
Yes, they got what they. I mean, they lost in the short term in the 1890s, but they got everything they were after. It took a while. Women got the vote, farmers got the farm program. It took a while, but we went off the gold standard, which was a great triumph. Yeah, and the same happened again in the 30s, and the civil rights movement had their oh my God, they got the two monumental civil rights bills. These are all triumphs. I should also say that in the context of 2016 and 2020, you did have Bernie Sanders in the race, and he was reforming the Democratic Party from within was actually what he was trying to do. And it was in contrast to, and I had voted for Nader in 2000, a little bit scarred by that. I'm an admirer of Ralph Nader, liked what he was saying. I'm not one of those who thinks that he caused Al Gore to lose the election. I think Al Gore lost that election all on his own. But at the same time, I felt a little burned by that whole experience. And I was really excited for what Sanders was doing, which was basically Ralph Nader's politics, even better than Ralph Nader's politics. But doing it within the Democratic Party. And oh my God, he came goddamn close. People don't remember this now, but he gave them a scare when he won the New Hampshire primary, et cetera, et cetera.
In 2016, I think he gave them a scare. Okay, so here's my kind of version of how things went down. In 2016, he was able to give them a bit of a scare because he took them by surprise, and a lot of more populist right-wing types voted for him in the Democratic primary and then went over and voted for Trump in the general. I think 12% of Sanders voters voted for Trump. Now, that is not significant in terms of like when you compare it to the fact that 25% of Clinton primary voters in 2008 ended up voting for McCain, right? People made a big deal of the Bernie to Trump voter as if they cost Hillary the race. Whatever you feel about that, it was significant in the sense that once those 2016...
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that then, and I don't follow it now. I mean, it doesn't... The vilification of Sanders was just... It never made a lot of sense to me, except for what we're talking about, right? These are people who are protecting the institution of the Democratic Party, and they don't want him defiling the temple. Hey, but look,
what happened was
we're running out of time. But I want to say, Russell and Keaton, if you guys want to get a third party going on the national scale, goddamn, I've been waiting for that all my life. And people have made efforts, right? You remember the New Party, and there was an effort to build a sort of an American Labor Party. There have been
there was what was the Ross Perot thing? The Freedom Party?
Well, the Reform Party, but that was never a left party.
Right.
What we're missing in this country, what happened was that there's no left party. I mean, there's the libertarians would certainly, they've had a certain amount of success building their third party, but to hell with that. If that were to happen, I would be like overjoyed. And I would be like one of the first guys to sign up for it. The problem, we're going too far here. I don't want to theorize too much.
Please,
we have 11 minutes left.
Okay. No, it would be great. It would be wonderful. And like I said, it would be very healthy for democracy. This country needs that. When the two parties have come together to contrive to ignore. I mean, that's what Clintonism was to contrive to take all the old the issues of the old Franklin Roosevelt Democratic Party off the table. That's right. It's not even part of what we do anymore as a Democrat. We're a different thing. We're Reaganism with a human face.
And a point I really want to make while you're here, because it's something that you really get into in the book. You talk about how, ironically, under FDR, this is when the professional class came in, but they were kind of rebel academics.
Yes.
But by the 50s, they saw themselves as insiders.
Yes, and that's right. It's a huge change in American life. Yeah, keep going. Sorry about that.
But it seems like they kind of rewrote the history of the labor movement to make it sound like the labor movement and the populist movements were the reactionary racists.
Yes,
where it was actually their class that had always been the reactionary racists.
Yes.
While the labor movements and populist movements were unusually anti-racist, particularly going
for
back
their time.
to the
Absolutely.
1890s.
The
You
populists
talk about how
were
the United Auto Workers fought against George Wallace in the northern states. You point out, which I think people on the left commonly know, but they don't really put the pieces together. What was MLK doing in Memphis?
Yeah.
He was there for a
supporting
garbage union strike, and he spoke very much. You have a whole section where he talked about the history of the Populist Party.
Yes,
and how
it's all forgotten. It's all been buried.
Right,
Nobody knows this stuff.
And how they really, had to make sure that blacks and whites were divided against that because they were coming together in the 1890s.
Wouldn't it be amazing, guys, if somebody went on NPR and talked about that stuff?
And they don't. They don't. They cast it just as Archie Bunker. They're all Archie Bunkers, the labor people.
Well, there was one of the villains in The People Know is this a sociologist from the 50s called sorry, it's been a while since I looked at it.
I know.
Lipset was his name. Seymour Lipset, and he wrote a famous essay in the 50s called about working class authoritarianism. And the idea is that all working class people are authoritarians. Now, their organizations might say they're not authoritarian, and in fact might be the opposite of authoritarian, but they are anyways. And he's
because they're insecure about
evidence, right? Because he can prove it with psychological theory. Don't you love that? It's just it's the worst kind of logical errors. But that is the consensus academics of the 1950s, and that got then sort of recycled through the sort of phony radicalism of the late 60s. I shouldn't say phony. There were a lot of real radicals in the late 60s, but it got recycled through this kind of radical language, and it's everywhere today. And take a step back here. I should admit to you, people have different frames for looking at American history, and mine is social class. I'm really I see everything through the lens of social class, and the class that nobody writes about is the most interesting one. Historians have always written about the working class. They've written about farmers. They've that blah blah blah. They don't write about the professional elite, the professional middle class. Barbara Ehrenreich used to write about them, and Christopher Lasch used to write about them. But other than that, almost nobody. And that group fascinates me, absolutely fascinates me. And when you think about them as a class, and they behave as a class, and they invent little myths that they tell one another, and they all read the New Yorker, and they all listen to NPR, and they come up with this way of thinking about themselves. And one of the things is that they have decided that they carry all the great virtues of American history, that they are the anti-racist ones, right?
Sure. And
they're the ones that really believe in democracy. But historically, that's just false. It is just flatly untrue, and anyhow. But they ascribe all of the sort of villainous characteristics in American history. They ascribe those to the class enemy, to the blue collars.
Of course.
And
this is the problem.
It's just so funny.
Sorry,
go ahead. No, you go ahead. I blabbed too much.
This is what I was saying when it comes to, when we're talking about inside versus outside party strategies, right? You had Bernie in 2016 have a real wave of independent populist types flocked to him in the primary. And then a lot of those voters went on and voted for Trump. And then Trump won, which meant 4 years later in 2020, they weren't going to come back into the Democratic Party primary and vote for Bernie. They were Trump people. They had already branded themselves.
I'm afraid they're
and
lost.
For that reason, that was why the 2020 campaign had this different character to it. People said this feels more milquetoast. It feels more normie. Well, it had to be because there was no influx of populist, grubby independents coming in to vote for Bernie because they all went to Trump. So he had to run a more normie campaign within the Democratic Party, which is why he peaked at about 33% in 2020 as opposed to 47% in 2016, because a lot of his movement was literally filtered out of the party in 2016. They were no longer accessible to him in 2020. 4 years down the road after Biden wins, we're in an even worse spot to take over the Democratic Party. These people own it now. I mean, there's no grabbing it from them now. To the point where these do-gooder liberals that you talk about, they said, oh, yeah, we're for Medicare for all. Yeah, absolutely. 90% of Democrats support Medicare for all, but only 30% vote for it because the 60% who support supported but didn't vote for it don't need it. And they're the ones who own the party. So fuck them. Fuck them and fuck the whole country, to be honest with you. I don't care if Trump wins. I'm not afraid of Trump winning at all. And that's the attitude I think you really have to take.
Well, wow.
My cards are on the table.
I'm sorry.
All right,
That's what should I say to that? I wonder what they're going to do. I wonder what you guys think about think Biden. I mean, so I'm here in DC, or I'm in the Beltway anyways. And, it's kind of a guessing game. It's like a parlor game here. How do you think they're going to play it? Because Biden he's got like the lowest approval rating ever recorded or something. Have you seen this? It's,
yes.
He's looking more and more frail as the days go by. His, what's he going to do? And it's not looking like, even though Trump is indicted, and all these different blah, 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 blah. It's insane. I don't know what he's going to do, but they are desperately afraid of an open primary. I think desperately afraid. So they have to come up with a system for passing the torch from one to another, like Obama did to Hillary. And do you remember how they were, I even got in audiences would get pissed off at me for I even once got a death threat for saying something critical about Hillary Clinton. Can you imagine that? It was on.
Was it from Hillary Clinton?
No. It was on Facebook of all things. It was like it's the dumbest thing in the world. But there was this sense that there shouldn't be an opponent to Hillary Clinton. She was not the incumbent, remember? She was not the sitting president, but there was this sense that you got that people did not have a right to run against her, and that Bernie was somehow illegitimate for that reason. And so they want to repeat that kind of operation. So, but they want to, hand the torch from Biden to somebody without allowing for another free-for-all primary within the Democratic Party.
Well, that's an interesting point, because that's... Sorry, go ahead, Russell.
In the normal course of things, they would hand it off to Kamala. But
they absolutely...
It's not going to work because they absolutely insisted, as they tend to do, on ignoring all of the evidence with this really inflated belief that they can still dictate opinion in a way that they cannot if they ever had that much control. It certainly waned. People didn't like her before. They don't like her now. They've been trying to make Kamala happen for years. She's not going to happen. And they finally realized that.
Yeah. So I don't know who they're going to pass it to. It doesn't look like Mayor Pete is a starter either. I mean,
a lot of people are saying Newsom.
Oh my God. Oh, anyhow, so this is, I hate this kind of speculation. I shouldn't have encouraged it, and I apologize, and I take it back. And every now and then I wake up and Keaton, I've got exactly I share your sentiments exactly.
Trust your instincts. When you wake up, that's when those testosterone levels are highest. That's when you're at your most focused. You have your most faculties about you. You got to trust those instincts, because
and I wake up and I'm pissed off. I wake up going,
well, exactly. Well, look, I mean, but in all seriousness, are we in a place? I know you have to go in a moment. Are we in a place? At what point do we feel we have nothing to lose? Right. That's the real question.
That's okay. Fair enough. And look, there are millions of people who share that exactly what you're saying. I know that they're absolutely furious. So we could have this conversation over again and do it in a completely different direction. But I often remind people of what the small town Midwest looks like. This is the great repository of national virtue, Frank Capra movies, whatever. It's in ruins everywhere you go, unless it's a college town or a town with a hospital in it or a town with a prison in it. It's the small town is a wreck. It's, the buildings are all boarded up. Sometimes the boards have gone because they got put up 20 years ago. It's a ruin. And and with the exception of like certain neighborhoods in Kansas City where the creative class, the quote unquote creative class, the Clinton's people where they live, the cities are like that as well. Everybody can see this. The promise of American life, the name a famous book from long ago, has disappeared for a huge part of this country's population. The great society that Lyndon Johnson used to talk about and that Martin Luther King aspired to join, right? Gone. This was something that was very real in the 1960s, the great middle-class society that we were all going to join one of these days. That dream, that hope is completely gone for so many people, and they have a sense of bitterness that is hard to put into words. And it's apparently the only, and Trump speaks to it.
Yes.
Much as I hate to admit it. And the Democratic Party, which should be the natural, right? The party of Roosevelt, party of Bryan, party of Johnson, et cetera, should be the ones who are out in front of this, but they aren't. They can't figure it out. They've become this different beast. We're not going to talk about that now because your viewers obviously know about that. I don't know what's going to happen. It's not a good situation when, it's a dreadful situation. I don't have any answers here. Now, what can I say to really make people start to cry here now that we're turning it off? It's an absolutely shitty situation. I don't know how, I don't know what the answer to it is. My crystal ball has gone foggy. I can't tell what's going to happen. And right now it looks like God. I'm not going to say it. Okay.
Well,
no, I'm done.
What were you going to say?
I think a Trump second term looks likely.
All right. Well, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be afraid of. What are you worried about?
He's something to be afraid of.
I don't think so. Look, what I would say is when you speak to that level of hopelessness, that level of despair, because I started out the 2020 cycle somewhat radicalized, but I was not a Bernie or Buster at the start of that cycle. I was convinced that Trump was worth getting rid of. But then a couple of people talked to me. They said, when you talk about people who need medical debt cancellation in order to live, in order to keep a roof over their head, or people who need universal health care or need their student debt forgiven or need these things that Bernie's talking about, if they stand up and say, okay, we are willing to go all in for this and threaten the Democrats with annihilation if they don't capitulate. This narrative that the PNC,
that's what's been happening. That is de facto what has been happening since, for years. And that's the message of what's the matter with Kansas and the message of Listen Liberal. And that message never got through. The message
at a certain point, look, my wife works at a hospital. We're not poor, right? You're obviously not a poor man. Russell is not a poor man either.
Look at all those books.
Look at all those books. At a certain point, I think solidarity with desperate people in desperate need means willing to go all in with them, even if it means sacrificing an uncomfortable situation for us. Now, I personally still don't feel I have much to lose if Trump wins, but if you do, that's fine. I think part of solidarity with these populist type movements means being able to say to the UPS worker who is loading boxes from midnight to 8 in the morning, working Walmart noon to 8 at night, 5 days a week, who's at the end of his rope, part of solidarity with those workers is saying, we are with you in demanding what you need, or else we will let this country burn. And that is what solidarity sounds like to me. Solidarity does not sound like, well, yeah, we're going to try, but then we're going to blink at the last second and give Joe Biden 4 more years because Trump is scary.
Do you think? Yeah. I don't know.
Well, also because of so much of what you talk about in your books, we did try to take over the Democratic Party, but it is so controlled by the liberal class that you describe. It is not takeoverable. Everybody that we sent in there it's like a zombie movie. Everyone we sent in there got turned.
And yet, okay, this has to be the last comment. So I'm not demanding the last word. You guys can go on and on.
No.
But, and yet they did take it over. Not us. The white collar, professional class took it over in the 70s. I described this in Listen Liberal, and not in great detail. I mean, people have written that story before. It's totally forgotten now, by the way. I'm always getting emails from members of the public who don't know that story and are astonished to learn that it actually happened. I think I left this out of the book because I thought it was a cliche, but it turns out it's not. Nobody even knows about it. Do you remember Mike Royko columnist in Chicago.
Yeah,
He said when he was writing about this period in history, he was writing at the time. He said anybody that would try to reform the Democratic Party by getting rid of the white ethnic vote, he said it's like starting a diet by shooting yourself in the stomach, and yet that's what they did. That's what they did. And because they, eventually Bill Clinton was able to win, they're like, hey, it was a triumph. It worked. We got our way. And it has been a catastrophe. It has been a disaster. Now, I'm absolutely exhausted. I'm drained. Got to go eat that pizza.
All right.
Thank you so much. Listen,
hey, you don't have pizza in DC. You got to come up to New York. We'll have some pizza.
I had a horrible pizza tonight, the worst pizza I've ever had in my life. I'll tell the audience about that when you're gone, Thomas. But listen, I know we pushed each other around a little bit, but it was sincerely, it was a great honor and a great pleasure to meet you. And I hope we can talk again.
Let's do this again one of these days when we're closer to the to the end point.
Exactly. Right. And you did, just to be clear, you did endorse Cornel West for president in this interview.
Well, I really admire him. He's a great man. It's too early to tell, but he is a great man. Look, I always said if a personal friend of mine or an acquaintance even actually runs for president, I'm kind of bound to vote for the guy, even if he doesn't have a chance, So we'll see. I really like him though. He's great.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. That's a maybe. That's a maybe.
Yeah, a strong maybe.
A strong maybe. We'll take it.
All right, gentlemen. We'll see you later.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. It was great meeting you, Thomas.
Thomas Frank, everybody. That was fun.
That was fun. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome. Big fan of Thomas Frank's work, and I think some of the inconsistencies that I've realized are why I wanted to have that talk. And I think that was a good talk.
Yep.
That was what the Jordan interview should have been.
Exactly. I sat there and I knew I was over preparing. I prepared all of these questions. I was, going step by step through his work. And 10 minutes in, I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. That's not going to work.
Exactly.
Just rip that up and just roll with it.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, good talk. I'm really glad that we did it, and he had an out at 9. Had to have pizza. God, did I have the worst pizza I've ever had in my life? It was absolutely horrible. Because I told Russell we were talking about how we're going to prep for the show, and it was about 5:00, and my wife was not off work yet. When you work at a hospital, there's you can't just leave when the clock strikes your out point. You got to treat all the patients. Which, by the way, my wife is a lactation consultant. She's not a doctor, so she doesn't earn six figures. No. So when I say we're not poor, we're not rich either. Don't cancel the Patreon.
If you're at 6 figures, Keaton would be on the other side. It'd be Thomas, I think you're a little hard on the liberal class in that thought.
No, we are not. We're by no means sitting pretty. So don't cancel your Patreon, folks. I just wanted to keep it real in the sense that, because that was, our friend Alan Howell really convinced me of that during that 2020 campaign. Solidarity with workers means being willing to go down with the ship with them. And I think a lot of why a lot of PMCs don't want to do that is because they feel like, if this country turns into something else, right, under Trump, that jeopardizes my position, right? And they're afraid of that. But workers are not afraid of that because workers have hit rock bottom already. And so if you're really going to be in solidarity with workers, you have to be willing to take the risks that they are willing to take and live with the consequences.
Right.
Well, and to me, saying at the last minute, I guess we got to vote Biden. No, that ain't it.
Well, that's why I was getting into right at the beginning. Look, his work very strongly implies that it's not worth being in the two-party system. Right. How do you read the Thomas Frank trilogy, as I would call it, and be like, but we got to stick with those Democrats.
Right.
You're really not left with, if anything, especially with him leaving off with the people know and this exploration of populism's past triumphs. I came away from reading that feeling like, the only chance we have is to get back to that and look at how that succeeded in the past and dissect and make people more aware of how we've been hoodwinked, how we got tricked into being where we are now.
Right.
How the Republicans stole some of the rhetoric of populism. The liberal class stole some of the rhetoric. And both of them really represent two sides of the reactionary forces that have always suppressed popular movements.
Indeed. Indeed. Folks, let's take some super chats, shall we? Dave Delarai, Thomas Frank, very nice guest. Thank you, Dave.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate that. And by the way, Dave sent us some awesome AI-generated fan-made T-shirt designs that Russell would really love. I don't know if you've checked our email inbox, but you'll love them. We'll show them on the show on Friday morning, actually.
Oh, cool. What, like Due Dissonance T-shirts?
Yeah.
Designs?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, very, very well done. Really cool. We will show those on Friday morning. Seems like Mr. Frank should send Russell a signed copy of his most recent book. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
Thanks, Tusker. Ruthless Criticism. Ruling ideology is the ideology of the ruling class by Karl Marx. Excuse me. Populism is not inherently good because material power can influence popular opinion. Anti-populism, because it's popular, it's bad. Yeah, no, I mean, look, populism is not inherently good. What populism is, in my view, is a representation of democracy in action, which, is what all these people talked about Trump being such a grave threat to. And as I mentioned to Thomas at the top of the interview, in 2016, it was all consolidated power and capital backing Hillary, and ordinary people backing Trump. Not just ordinary people, but ordinary people with no college degrees, ordinary people who were detached from those very institutions. That was populism. Because there were enough of them in enough places, Trump won. That's called democracy. So I never really understood this idea. It never made sense to me.
Well, it was a completely democratic outcome when you consider the state of the country and how it got that way. Of course, there was going to be this back. You did not allow people to reject the establishment from the left, so they rejected it from the right. That was very predictable, and that's what I went all over, knocking on doors in Massachusetts on Super Tuesday, telling people. I told them, if you nominate Hillary, Trump is going to be the president.
Right. Well, that's the thing, because that's
why I still like to watch those motherfuckers crying. It wasn't funny that night, was it? You thought it was funny when I told you that. You weren't laughing that night.
Well, I tried to make
laughing real quick, you motherfuckers.
See, I mean, this is what everybody thought, and that's what I mentioned to Thomas at the top of that interview. I mean, he was a great guest for a number of reasons, but I think that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to him, because he's one of these guys whose work really radicalized people in this space. Like, this space would not be what it is were it not for his books. Right. And it's kind of a bummer that he's not writing about politics anymore.
I mean, I don't, after reading The People Know, I can see why, because it's kind of his capstone. That book really is a summation of everything he's been saying. You know what I mean? Like, where would you go from there? Goddamn liberals. Like, what else? What would he say after that?
Well, I mean, I'd be interested into what he has to say about...
I mean, he could do an analysis of what's happening now through his particular lens.
Right, exactly. Jake reminded us, as did someone in the chat, we are long past 666. In fact, we're at 777. Russell.
Oh, yeah, I didn't want to do it with Frank on. I thought it would be weird. I didn't want to make it weird.
I don't even know where it is. Oh, here it is. Beautiful.
I mean, he probably would have had a sense of humor.
Oh, he'd have dug it. Yeah,
you want to be professional in these situations.
I remember when he and Katie Halper and Matt Taibbi were doing like a drinking game watch party of it was either a debate or a State of the Union. I think it was a State of the Union with Biden. And they started doing this a cappella, like, immigrant song version when Biden took the stage. It was fun. So he would have dug it. They started singing. So I think he'd have appreciated that. Next time. And there will be a next time. I mean, he wanted to come back, and I'm glad that he will. I would love to continue that conversation.
Yeah, he was a great guest
with him. Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's just once you have him on, he wants to hang. Like, he doesn't want to be asked a bunch of doctrinaire kind of questions. Like,
right.
It's not the kind of guest he is.
No. Dwayne Vogel, Thank you for the member chat. Dwayne is a member. You can support this show, by the way, by going to patreon.com/DoDissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com. We'll pull up our patron scroll after this member chat. You can also support us through YouTube by hitting that join button right under the screen. And if you're over on Rumble, please hit that follow button in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We have to take back the term populism. Populism is the essence of democracy. I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
That's a lot of what his book is about, how they
Indeed.
stole that term and made it mean the opposite of what it meant.
Right. Bonzo Beans over on Rumble gave us a Rumble rant. Thank you, Bonzo Beans, and thank you, Jake, for catching that and putting it up in our chat here. Bonzo Beans says, in his last live stream, Caleb Maupin gave a fascinating 1 hour plus history lesson on the Bay Area, San Fran, Berkeley, Oakland, in the 60s and 70s, and its relevance for today's Democratic Party establishment. Interesting. I will give that a view. Thank you for the recommendation. Kamashwari Kate. Zbigniew Brzezinski tricked Carter into Afghanistan. That's Mika's dad. Mika's old man. Oh, yeah, Mika's old man there. Folks, we had a bunch of people sign up at Patreon. That is extremely helpful. We have been warned by YouTube that the next time we piss off YouTube, we're going to be dark for a week. And so please, the way to censor-proof this operation, if you appreciate what we do, the best way to support us is to go to patreon.com/DoDissidents and sign up. You get call-in access to all of these regularly scheduled live streams. You also get access to 2 exclusive supporter live streams per month. We just did our last one on, what was that, Monday? Yeah, 4 shows in a row for me this week, folks. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, last night on Postal
I called in sick yesterday.
Yeah, Russell was ill yesterday prepping for this, but yeah.
Which honestly, I could have just fucking eaten pizza for the last day. I didn't have to prepare anything.
Right.
There's nothing I asked him that I'm not familiar enough with his work that I couldn't have asked him anyway.
Yeah.
I did all this prep like it was totally unnecessary.
Well, next time. Next time
I'll wing it.
Yeah.
Next time I'll wing it, and he's just gonna like sit there still.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Anything else? You get access to supporter exclusive streams. Our last one was Monday. It was a really, really fun one. I'm really proud of how that one came out. We go over on Rumble on an unlisted link where we can speak freely about things that we can't talk about here on the main YouTube channel.
Berlin, as we call it.
West Berlin, indeed. So if you would like to support us, that is the best way to do it. Go to patreon.com/DoDissidents. You can also go to DoDissidents.substack.com and sign up for free. That is a great way to stay in touch with us. We put audio versions of every live stream up, so you get a podcast version of every episode to listen to in the car, on your headphones, or wherever. And you can also sign up as a paid subscriber there to get the same perks as you would if you go to Patreon. So DoDissidents.substack.com. Even if you cannot join as a paid member, please go and join our email list so that we can get in touch with you no matter what happens on these various tech platforms that we're on. DoDissidents.substack.com. Please go and sign up for the free email list, even if you can't become a paid subscriber. That would be hugely
That
helpful.
way we know we can keep going. And hey, if you look at how much we do with jobs, imagine how much we would do if we didn't have to go and deliver pizzas and guide around Germans. I got a complaint from the Germans I guided around the other day.
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing is, when you're Jewish and Germans file a complaint, it's easy to defend.
Blame it on racism.
That's it. They're anti-Semitic. I didn't
You should do a conference with Rabbi Shmuley.
That's it.
You should call a press conference with him.
I'll have Shmuley call my contractor.
Call the contractor. Yeah.
There were 4 of them with Doc Martens. I didn't like the look of them.
Right. Exactly. Laugh. Thanks for the £2. Most Republicans prefer Biden to Trump and Frank. And Frank. Okay. I don't quite know how that reads. Do you know how that reads, Russell? Most Republicans prefer Biden to Trump and Frank. Well, most Republicans definitely prefer Trump to Biden. I don't know. I'm not sure what you mean there. But thank you for the donation. Franklin Warsham, appreciate the $9.99, sir. Thomas, do you think the constituencies in the 2 parties have switched places? Your yard signs bit is brilliant. Congratulations on Tell the People No.
You know, I wanted to mention that, but we were so rushed. I assume what you're talking about. So there's a great part in the book where he talks about those yard signs you see in the suburbs. In this house, we believe science is real,
Right.
and right, the immigrant is welcome. And he points out, what do you not see there? Anything about labor, anything about wages, nothing about economics. It's all identity in those signs, in those lawn signs. I assume that's what you're referring to. I wanted to bring it up, but time was tight.
Time was tight, and time flew. That interview flew by.
Yeah.
Flew by. Ruthless Criticism with $100. That's good for 2 singing bowls. Let's get a long singing bowl going for Ruthless Criticism.
All right.
Thank you.
I got to do this in a way that doesn't hurt our DSA members.
Right. Exactly. Position it far from the mic. Beautiful.
Instead of doing 2,
Keep going. Yeah, we're giving you a double. We'll make that a double. Still going. Look at that. Look at this guy.
Yeah. See? That's what we call a rim job.
Yeah. Should work for Tips in New Haven. Just set up on a corner there. Ruthless Criticism. If settling everything for all time is not our affair, it's all the more clear what we have to do at present. The ruthless criticism, I see what you did there, of all that exists, both in the sense of not being afraid and the results, and of not fearing conflict with the powers that be. For $100, I have to not butcher it. If settling everything for all time is not our affair, all the more clear what we have to do at present, the ruthless criticism of all that exists, both in the sense of not being afraid of the results and of not fearing conflict with the powers that be. Karl Marx. There you go. Yes, that's a good quote to pull in that conversation, because one of the things that I was talking about at the tail end are a sense of stakes, right? At what point do you have nothing to lose? So thank you. Yeah, I couldn't butcher the quote for a $100 donation. I had to go do it from the top. I figured I owed you that much. But thank you, my friend. That's very, very kind of you. Very, very generous. We appreciate it. Tusker, Frank should come back on and you guys should schedule more time. Yes, indeed. Indeed. We would love that.
I mean, Taibbi, he was just like, yeah, guys, can I sleep over?
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, he said he had to eat dinner. He told us he had to eat dinner. Yeah. Which, do people eat dinner at 9:00? I mean, I have kids now, so the kids go to bed at 7:30. But my wife and I were always, early to bed, early to rise. Like, we were never dinner at 9:00
depends on the
people. Yeah. We were always, dinner at like 6:30, 7:00, even when we didn't have the little ones. But thank you for the member chat, Tusker. DC, thanks for the $2. Thomas Frank, Jill Stein, 2024. Frankenstein, 2024. Yes, that would be a good ticket. I like that. Hard to resist that, right? Hard to resist that. I mean, I don't understand how in Washington, D.C., he's not... I don't understand how he's not a lock for Cornel West in Washington, D.C.
I mean it's sad. Look, man, I am comfortable clipping that as Thomas Frank endorses Cornel West.
Yeah, right.
We send it to Fox.
That's why you don't
CNN. That's why you handle the titles.
Let me tell you, I'm totally comfortable misrepresenting what he said.
Yes, I feel that he would be comfortable with that too.
Exactly.
Will S, thank you.
Thanks for the $5. Remember, there were at least 4 million one- or two-time Obama voters who turned around to vote for Trump in 2016, far more than voted Green. Well, I mean, this is part of what I was trying to communicate toward the end, and I think I did. I think he heard us out. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to have him on. Like 2016, the reason Bernie came close, quote unquote, because they had the superdelegate option if they needed it, right? So he didn't come nearly as close as we thought he would. I think given everything that's gone on since, there's no doubt they would have pulled the superdelegate coup if they had to, right? But the reason he polled close, let's say, in 2016 was because it was this very sort of unpredictable year where there was just this populist fervor in the air, and you had Bernie and Trump emerge at the same time, and there were a lot of people who had Bernie first Trump second. Well, once Bernie was knocked out, they went to Trump. And then in 2020, those votes were no longer available to Bernie anymore because those people were already Trumpers by then. That's why the 2020 campaign had to exist entirely within the confines of the Democratic Party electorate, which is why he didn't poll nearly as well. And now you're talking about 4 years past that, when the sort of split in terms of demographics, in terms of class demographics, class profiles, has only become more drastic. There's just absolutely zero reason, in my view, to feel like it's worth trying to take that party over. But everybody here knows that already. I had to let Thomas know, since that was the first time he talked to us.
Well, and I think also, he writes very sensitively about the realities of the political parties and their relationship to the class structure in America, which is why his work has radicalized so many people. At the same time, we were talking about why so many people are done with the Democratic Party. Look, is Thomas Frank affected by what's happened with the Democratic Party? Like the people who were on the ground knocking on doors for Bernie have been affected by it, right?
Right.
So, that's what I was trying to get across. Like, hey, man, we tried that. We tried to take over the party from the inside. Everybody we sent in there became one of them.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So why? We're going to keep doing that?
Right. Absolutely. Courtney is a member. Thank you, Courtney. I love watching this first, as I intend to start reading his books tomorrow. They're on the shelf, ready to go. His books are fantastic. Like I said, his books are essential to this whole movement, to the extent that a movement exists, or if not a movement, this whole space, right? I mean, Jimmy has mentioned Listen Liberal tons of times. Like I said, I wasn't lying. I wasn't blowing smoke up his ass. What's the Matter with Kansas is the only book I've read cover to cover that a teacher told me to read cover to cover. It's the only one. I never did my assigned reading in high school, college, never. What's the point? What do I need to do? Okay, Lord of the Flies is about how society breaks down under trying circumstances. Okay, I understand the book in one sentence. What do I got to read the book for? Why? Okay, I know what it's about. You've told me the thesis of the book. What do I have to read 200 pages for? Well, I got to spend 5 days reading a story about that? Just tell me what it's about.
Fucking War and Peace. Fucking Napoleon comes. A lot of shit blows up. And then they take them out. What? I gotta read fucking 900 pages? What the fuck? I got shit to do.
Shit to do, exactly. So it seems like insane. Who would read a book? Bernie Sanders, safe and effective. Yes. Thank you, DC. Trudeau and his wife split like France itself. Yes, Trudeau's wife. Yeah, they split up. Split up.
I didn't think they split up in France. They just took a mistress.
Well, they're not in France. They're in Canada, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, but, they're French, aren't they?
She should head down to that trucker convoy now that she's on the market. Have herself a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pick herself up a couple of truckers.
Exactly.
That could have been his cuckold fetish, though.
Yeah, you never know.
See her do it with one of the truckers that he
Maybe that's why I busted their balls in the first place. Maybe that was part of it. Part of the role playing. Yeah.
Debank me, huh, motherfucker? You want to debank me? Watch this. Sacre bleu.
Anti-Ant, thanks for $2. Haha, I got my Frenchies mixed
you
up.
You are not going to get a bit like that on any other
No, not on any other podcast.
Justin Trudeau being cuckolded by a debanked trucker.
Being debanked trucker. Tusker for $5 says, Russell, you over prep for interviews with the PMCs because you expect them to be able to intellectually outmaneuver you, but your gut instincts are better. No, we weren't trying to outmaneuver him. We just had more of a deep dive into his body of work.
I like his work. I wasn't.
Yeah, we're fans. We weren't trying.
I got to trap Donald. No. It's just being. I'm like that about everything I care about. I'm very meticulous.
Yeah, exactly. We have questions written. Like I was going to play a clip of him on Bill Maher. And get his thoughts. I mean, one of the things we didn't really get to talking about, which is kind of, it's unfortunate because that really bears a lot on 2024, is, what is his opinion of Biden, because he appeared on the Bill Maher show in April of 2021, right after Biden had sort of unveiled the sort of Build Back Better program, more or less. And at the time, it looked like he was going to try to get things like, a permanent child tax credit and paid family leave and things like that. And so Frank was talking about how Clinton destroyed the Democratic Party in the 90s and how Biden looked like he had recognized the error of that era and was trying to, restore some sort of working class power through the Democratic Party. Of course, one of the questions I had is, okay, can we get an update on that? Because I honestly, look, we didn't have much of a show back then. We were mostly an audio podcast. But we took a lot of shit from our audience at the time for saying, hey, listen, we didn't vote for Biden. We didn't support Biden. We don't like Biden. But if we can get paid family leave, let's not look a gift horse in the mouth over that. Let's see if we can do it. And for me, the real final straw was the Build Back Better debacle. Once Jayapal caved, that was it. That was like, okay, forget it. Yeah.
That was we attacked our audience, and then we had to do a whole show about this. Remember that? We had to do a whole show. I told our audience, I was like, never assume that the nasty motherfucker that attacks other people will never come after you.
Will never attack you. Right. Exactly. Right. Remember that. We were mostly an audio show at the time, but I was not where Frank was. Like, I didn't have faith that Biden really wanted to do it. I felt that coming out of the pandemic, there was a certain sense that there was more possibility in the air, and so he might ride popular sentiment to actually sign off on a couple of these things. And Frank thought so at the time too, and I haven't heard him speak about Biden since then, so I would have loved to get a take as to, okay, once that question fell apart,
I would love to have gotten to.
How has that affected your judgment? And I sense he would feel about Biden more or less the way we do now, from the way he was talking about it, right? Yeah. I mean, he seemed to share all of our critiques.
He didn't have a good thing to say about him. So.
Exactly. Tusker said that was the best interview I've seen of Frank from the left. Well, thank you, Tusker. We appreciate that. That's a very nice compliment. We appreciate it. Extra Bulla, thanks for the $2. Extra Bulla. I enjoyed this Frank interview. You're welcome. Yes, that's a good play on words there, my friend. Extra Bulla, bring in the jokes as always. Mario Lorenzo, thank you for the $5. Sir, sweltering in Russ's beloved New Orleans. Oh, you're in New Orleans now, trying to stay above ground while bicycling in the city.
I was in New Orleans. You know that one?
That's Tom Waits.
That's Tom Waits. Of course it is.
Indeed.
I can see it in my dreams. Trying to stay above ground while bicycling in the city despite the heat and reckless asshole drivers. See, I can't even imagine being there this time of year, man. Everyone I've talked to who's been there this time of year, you could still see it's like the 1,000-yard stare from Nam they get in their fucking eyes when they talk about the heat in New Orleans in the summertime. I may go down there January to May, though. I might spend that part of the year down there.
Interesting. All right.
Well, I think it would be interesting to cover the election from the South. You know what I mean? Like the first half of the year to cover it down there.
The first half of the year. Yeah. Well, that would be when the primaries are taking place.
Right, where we have to set up this freaking fundraiser so we can go to those states. I'll be closer to Texas and further from Iowa.
Yeah, indeed. For sure. Ellen is a member. Thank you, Ellen. RFK on Jimmy. His footage at the wall was so ignorant, I was dumbfounded. Talked with Todd Miller about it. He, too, was astounded. Yeah, you emailed us about that earlier. I will watch that segment.
Whose footage at the what? What is this?
RFK did, a big interview with Jimmy the other day, and the RFK stuff is what's really making the rounds, which we talked about on the Post-Duopoly show last night. But he got into immigration a bit too, and I know Jimmy just clipped that. I will watch that, and perhaps we'll talk about that on Friday. I know, Ellen, you were talking about calling in.
Oh, so. You're saying RFK's was ignorant.
Border
in the
comments were
footage.
ignorant. Yeah, exactly.
I got you. I see.
So I'll watch that clip and maybe we'll cover it Friday or Sunday. I'll let you know which day we're going to do it, Ellen, but we'll do it one of those 2 days. And yeah, we'd love to have you call in. We haven't heard from you in a while. You haven't called in a while, so that would be awesome.
I said I don't know how many of you follow me on Twitter, but Marianne today tweeted out, "It's so pathetic. It's so pathetic." She tweets out mask mandates in public facilities and air scrubbers on public transportation. So I guess this is her way of trying to catch the COVIDians who might not like RFK. It's like two bums fighting for a half a sandwich, like it's just sad. Like, what are you fighting over? The 6 people who will vote for either one of you fucking screwballs? Stop it. Stop it.
It's over.
You're making a fool out of yourself. And Bree, I really don't understand. With Bree, I don't get, because one day she's like taking a stand. You don't have to vote for Biden. And the next second she's Marianne, she's coming up in the polls. It's like, I don't think she's stupid. She says these incredibly stupid things, though.
From time to time. Yeah, we covered a lot of that interview last night on the Post-Duopoly show. That was a fun show, but it was exhausting because there was a lot of stuff there that just kind of made you crazy. So, yeah, we got into a lot of that stuff then. But we will get into more on Friday morning, folks. I think that's our show for the evening, is it not?
Yeah, if no one wants to give us no more money, more money.
We're at 1 hour and 40 minutes, a tight stream, an interview show for you guys. But thank you guys very much for being here. We are going to be back on Friday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. We will be back here again on Sunday night. Not Sunday. Not Sunday. Sunday, we will be in the city, in New York City, filming the anti-war rally, Humanity for Peace. That is going to be at Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza on 47th Street.
It's going to be, the 4th time we've ever been in the same place at the same time?
Indeed. 4th place, Russell and I will meet in the flesh. And we're going to be there supporting our friend Jose Vega and the rest of the speakers at that peace rally at Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza. So if any of you are in the New York City area, we encourage you to come and be part of the rally and say hello. 47th and 2nd, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. So no show that night, obviously, because I'll be headed back up here to the capital region when we would normally have a show. We will be back Monday, August 7th next week. So this coming Sunday, no show. So this Friday, 9 a.m., Monday, 8 p.m., August 7th. That will be Russell's birthday. Woo! Indeed. His birthday show. So get your super chats ready. Let's make it rain for Russell on his birthday. Then Wednesday, we are going to be welcoming...
If I had known I was going to live that long, I wouldn't have lifted with my back.
Right, exactly.
Who knew?
Wednesday.
They kept telling me, don't lift with your back. I'm like, I'm going to be dead by the time I'm 40. Was it that?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Now I'm like, I shouldn't have lifted with my back.
Oy, my back.
Oy vey.
Oy vey.
My aching back.
Bonzo Beans gave us $1 in Rumble Rant. Mo money, he says. Thank you, Bonzo Beans. Courtney, fine. Here's more money, $5. Take it with you to NOLA. I'm a good secretary, LOL. And Dave, more money, more problems. Thank you guys very much. We appreciate that. Very, very kind of you.
If you come to New Orleans, you better go to the Mardi Gras.
This is what makes those Friday shows so great, is that when we put an interview show together for Wednesday and we miss the headlines, we can catch up on headlines this week. Plenty to talk about Friday morning. That should be a fun show. So Friday, no show Sunday, show Monday night, August 7th at a special time slot. And then Wednesday, August 9th, for those who missed it at the top of the show, we are going to be welcoming Shama Sawant to the program 1 week from tonight. That'll be at 8 p.m. We are really, really looking forward to that. We've been trying to talk to Shama for a while. I see Tusker in the back room. Do you want to come on and talk for a little bit before we sign off, or should we sign off? All right, go ahead. What's going on? We'll keep this going.
Jan says, when I come to New Orleans, she'll show me where she lives and how the Poe folks live. What makes you think I don't know where you live? We're NSA, yo. We're NSA. We know where you all live. We just do this show to gather your information.
Right, exactly. So what's up, Tusker?
Oh, no, that great interview, and congrats on getting Kashama.
Yes, that'll be great. I'm really looking forward to that.
That's great.
Yeah. So the reason we got Shama is because we've started.
We told her we're Puerto Rican.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We've started tweeting our videos out. So we've started putting our videos on Twitter. So if you follow us on Twitter and you see our videos there, please give it a like and a retweet, because that's how we got Shama. Shama saw the video that we did on her urging a no vote. She followed us and retweeted that. And then once she followed us, I was able to DM her and invite her on, and she said yes. So if you retweet those videos, folks, that's what opens up the sort of possibilities, right? The more the videos get out there on Twitter, the more things like that can happen. And that's how that happens. So we're starting to put our videos up on Twitter. So if you come across them, please do us a solid. Hit the like button and retweet that shit.
Retweet that shit.
Yeah, I mean, that's
great. Me and Jan got a groovy thing going on here. Yeah, I know where that is. I walked all over New Orleans last year because I was thinking about stupidly buying a house there, but I was too smart to do it. Over there, that's where you got like some roads that used to be roads, and now there's like 3 pieces of tarmac, and it's gone back to nature, right?
Yeah, that's
over there. No, I'm saying, and there's like a big cemetery over there too. I'm pretty sure.
Dr. Nick, because I can. Thanks, Dr. Nick. Appreciate that very much. So yeah, so you thought it was a good interview?
Oh yeah, it was absolutely. It was a great interview, and
fun.
also you do realize super chats do have a text limit, so I can't really get into like the whole like what I sent you. I wasn't saying anything about like thinking he was going to outmaneuver you. I mean, you know, sometimes I do kind of feel like that is definitely, this is the first time I've ever seen Frank on a post-duopoly show. I've never seen him be interviewed by someone post-duopoly, you know, and there are so many times that I see Katie Halper, I see plenty of people where they take, you know, the material and they go, oh, you mentioned this, would you talk more about that? And it's like, well, if I've already read that book, then, you know, I've already read it. Like, I already know what he's going to say about those types of things. And so I think just by having sort of sometimes that format of, you know, oh, let's talk about your work, let's talk about this, and kind of engaging in sort of more of like that type of format, because that's how I see so many like book interviews and stuff like that go, where it's just like, tell me more about your work, instead of just, okay, we've read your work, we kind of understand the theory. Now let's apply it to current analysis. Now like tell me, and that's how the interview naturally develops. That's what I meant by over preparing. Is instead of just like, okay, we know this, we're familiar with your work, apply it to now. How has it changed? You know, and what are you doing about it?
Well, that's once we found out we had an hour, because I had a whole thing of like, you know, going through a little bit about, okay, so you did What's the Matter with Kansas, and you know, I structured it like, you know, going through his body of work, and then insofar as we did the questions that were written, we started with the second half of it with the people know, and then we just very quickly dropped the script because it just wasn't going to work.
Yeah, and you'd said that I think about 25 minutes in, you were like, okay, well, clearly these questions don't matter. But it just would have been
weird to even try to do that. It just wasn't flowing like that.
But it made for one of the better interviews that I've seen with him.
Oh, no.
Where instead of just talking about, you know, the things that he said in the past and picking out good quotes to kind of like amuse him or anything like that, you know, you guys got to some more of the stuff, and, you know, hey, you made him a couple of times sort of like consider, like, you know, pause, consider, hear the burn it down argument, which so many of them
exactly
don't really
you're not going to hear that argument. I mean, you know, nothing against Katie Halper, but you're not going to hear that on that show. No. And I think it's important. I think it's important that he hear that, because I don't know how often he hears that, if he's ever heard that on a show that he's gone on.
I mean, I'm sorry, but this whole fear of Trump thing, it doesn't.
Well, that's why. I mean, I think I articulated that about as plainly as I could have.
Yeah.
I don't think I left much room for interpretation on that point.
I mean, even today, there are not a lot of libs left on my page, but there are a few. And, they're these morons because their media frames it to them this way. They're all like, hey, do you have any family members who are very Trumpist? I feel like I should send them to a support group. They are freaking out about this indictment, poor lambs. It's like, have you not noticed that he gets more popular with each indictment? Like, doesn't that make you say maybe we're not coming off well to the public?
Right, exactly.
I
Like,
mean,
are you really still believing that you have the conservatives and the MAGA people on the run? Like, you're still letting them tell you this? You don't remember the Hillary landslide that wasn't? You don't remember how they told you she was going to take Texas? You don't remember that?
Sure.
And you're sitting here like, oh, those dumb conservatives. I mean, it's unreal, man.
Well, my
What
thing
was
with
it
it
that
is,
Keaton said? Fuck the world.
yeah, no, it was great. It was great. I was like, oh,
No, he
and
just
the
said
fact that
fuck,
he just kind of
fuck
went,
them and
oh
fuck the whole
wow,
country
you know.
for all they get.
That was a writing. That's gonna be a legendary.
But here's kind of
that was a writing click in my old neighborhood.
here's kind of how I sort of like fear is politically limiting. It's very politically limiting.
Yes.
You know, if you have like this intense amount of fear over outcomes, then you can only move like a pawn on a chessboard.
Yes, great point.
You know, and like that's exactly what it is. And it's, for example, it's fear of Donald Trump that keeps liberals so unable to make coherent arguments, to analyze situations in real time, because there's this constant overhang of just like fear of what could happen. Well, I can't promise that, you know, any effort that we make is going to have an ultimately positive outcome, but I can tell you that continuing to do what we do is only going to have a negative one.
Of course, right. Exactly. That's a very similar version. Yeah.
I don't know why so many of these people are like limiting themselves in that way. And also,
it's class position. I mean, that's really
it
what
absolutely is. Because you are not sure. Maybe you might not like the way that Trump supporters express their class frustration, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. You have to be able to recognize the class position that those people are coming from and listen to what it is that bothers them about the system. But the more that you fear it and constrict them, you are going to get a reaction from them. And that's what you're not going to like.
I mean, if we had more time with him, there was a lot more to get into, because really, and that is, I did manage to get that in, like, hey man, in the end, his final book is kind of inspiring, because you could see how movements like this did succeed in the past. The thing is, they didn't succeed by going, we can't risk, taking down this part. They went for it, man.
Right, they went for
it. You can't win a game of chicken when you're prepared to blink first.
Exactly. Okay. No, exactly. That's it. Eric Rousseau, thanks for the $5. Anyone planning to read Jenk's new book, Justice is Coming?
Nope.
Yeah. Shake my head. Should be called Jenk's Fever.
Did he actually write about it?
He actually finished it. He's been talking that book up for a while, and now he's like on some kind of book tour. He will not be getting an invite from us for that book.
Who the fuck? No, I would totally bring him on.
Yeah.
Now that would
you could get a lot of clips in that.
That's true.
I mean, look, we'd be we'd be fair, but it probably wouldn't.
Oh yeah.
It would be.
No, I never think
it wouldn't go well.
That wouldn't go great. No.
I never think, like, I rarely ever think being rude or mean or anything like that is very helpful. You know, I wouldn't do it to anyone.
Yeah, I agree. Folks, thank you very much for being here tonight. We really appreciate you all. We will see you back here on Friday morning for some bright and early morning dew, where we will catch up on the headlines of the week. A lot of headlines to cover. The great thing about those Friday streams is when we do a Wednesday interview, we can always catch the headlines less than 48 hours later. So we'll see you then. We'll see you back here Monday. Once again, no show Sunday, show on Monday. You can go to patreon.com.
Special birthday show.
Indeed.
Think about what you're going to get me.
Show. Yeah, how about a Patreon membership for Russell's birthday? Patreon.com.
That is the present I want, because that's the gift that keeps on giving.
That's how you go, right? The gift that keeps on giving. That's right. So you can go there and support us. You can also go to dudissidents.substack.com and sign up for either a paid membership or even a free one. Helps us out a great deal. We thank you guys very much for being here tonight. We want to thank our wonderful guest, Thomas Frank, for making time for us this evening and joining us. It was a great talk. We hope to talk to him again.
It was a great honor.
It was a great honor.
This is the truth, man. In the darkest days of the pandemic, when we were still doing the show on Facebook, he was one of the two people I most wanted to interview.
Well,
the other one was Matt Taibbi. So now we've done both of them.
2 for 2. 2 for 2. Guys, thank you very much for being here. We'll see you Friday morning. Until then, please do be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.